Didn't have a above aft house, had a lower house. It went out towing a barge. It got caught in a storm. They turned around. They cut the barge loose. The barge dropped anchor. The anchor held, so the crew on the barge was saved. The Mataafa tried to run into between the pier heads. There's like a strong canal, and there's two cement piers going into Duluth, Minnesota. And so it went in. A wave caught it, jammed the bow into the center of the channel, did damage there, spun it around, jammed it on the stern, and then it was basically maybe a couple hundred yards offshore, but nobody could get to them. The the lifeboat service, they were busy helping another ship, the RW England, which grounded in the sand, rescuing that crew. And all these people were just watching in horror as the Mataafa's offshore and no one can get to them. Some of them did survive, a lot of them did. The ones that were able to leave that stern section and head forward, they were able to, a lot of the ships were wood back then, none of that fire retardant and stuff. They chopped up the wood, they threw it in the bathtub, set a fire, and they were able to live through the night, even though there was no steam, because the engine room was flooded by then. The stern crew, they weren't so lucky. The Mataafa had this scoop, like an air vent, and basically the motion would direct the air into the engine space to help cool it. There was someone that was sitting like wedged in there, trying to seek cover. That's where they froze. It was pretty gruesome. Next. So in 1905, Edwin F. Holmes was backing away from the coal dock up in Duluth, unassisted by tugs. Came in contact with a small ship. Picture like the Columbia at the grain elevator over here, something similar to that, but would carry mail. And one of the anchors, they protruded out. They weren't recessed, like modern ships are recessed. They protruded out. So as the wind caught it, it smashed in 5 wooden cabins. They took a quick look at the hull. Everything was good below the waterline, so they let her go. The Edwin F. Holmes left the next day. The America, she came to Buffalo in 1901, and she did the Buffalo Crystal Beach run for 1 year. But she's permanently wrecked up in Isle Royale National Park in Lake Superior, and you still can scuba dive her today. Next. Next. So the Ford, I covered that. Next. So this is the Harold B. Nye. This is the one that, this postcard view is in Buffalo, going through the Knife Bridge. This one was out on Lake Superior, was heavily damaged by the wind and wave, and it started taking on water. It was lower in the water, but they did make it safely. They made it to Two Harbors, Minnesota. Next. This ship is still around, believe it or not. This one was built in Chicago in 1905. It was the pride of the Pittsburgh Steamship Company. Later on, it transferred owners numerous times. The Canadians bought it. They sunk it as a breakwall up in Port Credit, Ontario. And if you cross the bridge, you still can see it to this day. This is the Isaac Elwood. Similar case to the Harold B. Nye. Had a lot of leaks. It made it into Duluth, but it sunk as soon as it came into Duluth Harbor. It sunk in the harbor. This is the Madeira, schooner barge Madeira. And this is also where I entered the story. I read a scuba diver's book on shipwrecks of the North Shore. I was up there visiting. I'm from Chicago originally, and the schooner barge was built in Chicago. I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. I want to see a shipwreck, but I don't want to get wet. So I was able to scour the rocks and see these channel bars, these I-beams all twisted in different ways. And it was just from the brute force of the ice pushing it, the waves pushing it against the rock and disintegrating it. And it left an impression on me. And later on I was able to discover the B Ford which also went through that storm, and that's where I started my ongoing fascination or story of the ship. The Madeira, she was cut loose from the William Edenborn. The William Edenborn made it onto the rocks. It didn't break up. The Madeira, she had golden rock or gold rock. Depending who you go to, they call it different names. So the mate, James Mardle, he climbed the mast, and the ship was doing this back and forth. He was trying to time it just right where he can jump off the mast onto the bluff. He didn't make it. They had another guy that climbed the rock, brought a hawser up, secured it to a tree, and everyone, the rest of the crew got off, including Captain John H. Dissett. He was rescued. He was a Buffalo resident. December 5th, he was back in Buffalo recovering from his injuries. He had some spinal pain, and his feet were frozen from the ordeal. Next. That's a picture of the package framer Gould, George Gould. Next. So this is a list of the crew members from the Mataafa. Captain Humble and first mate. These are the ones who lived. So you had the captain, the mate, the second mate, the wheelsman. They had a few firemen, watchmen, seamen. They had someone that shipped out Kanya. So the ship would come into port and someone would jump on board and they were crew. So probably maybe an OS or a wait. Next. This is the aftermath. It spent the winter out in the harbor, not harbor, outside the harbor, off Duluth, and people would walk over the ice and take pictures of it. Look at the damage. You can see the plate glass windows are smashed, and there's a lot of ice. Someone stole the brass cap to the capstan in that photo. This is the aft section. Chief Engineer William Mose of Cleveland, he lost his life. Second Assistant Engineer Claude Farringer of Cleveland, he also lost his life. James Early of Riley Street in Buffalo, he lost his life. There was William Gilchrist, Carl Carlson, Euler, Henry Wright Stewart, Cleveland, Walter Bush, James Suttle of Cleveland, and Thomas Woodgar, who also shipped out of Conneaut. Those are people that didn't make it. And that's after the math of the ship. You can see after she settled, she broke, the stern went below the water line. These are these air vents I was talking about. There was someone that was sitting inside one of these, and the whole stern section was covered in ice. Eventually they refloated it, put it back together, made it a car carrier, and it delivered cars over the Great Lakes until it was scrapped. This is another one, another Pittsburgh Steamship Company vessel, the Lafayette. The Lafayette wrecked near Encampment Island along the North Shore. Most of the crew made it safely. You see this yellow arrow here, there was a line from here up to one of the trees, and the waves were just really strong. You see how they just broke up the pilot house. So the pilot house wouldn't be a good place to stay on this one. So the waves were rocking the boat, and the hawser became really taut, like you're trying to snap it. And Mr. Patrick Wade of Buffalo, he was climbing it, and as it tensed up, he couldn't keep hold of it, so he drowned afterwards. But that's the Lafayette. This launch photo of the RW England, the one that went ashore around Minnesota Point in the sand. This is another one that went ashore, but everyone made it. They had a ladder here, they got off. That was near Lester Park. Moving on, so after 1905, the next major storm in Great Lakes history was the storm in 1913. And 1913 is when the Henry V. Smith, Captain James Jimmy Owens, the first master of the Edwin F. Holmes lost his wife on that vessel as it sunk on Lake Superior. Over in Buffalo area, there was a lightship off the coast here in Buffalo. And they found it 2 miles from where it was supposed to be stationed. The current dragged it, and it sunk, and there were 6 crew members that were lost in that one. This is a dry dock showing that it used to be in Buffalo. It's filled in now. It used to be across from where the Great Northern was. It's where they built the Canadiana. This is a dry dock photo showing the E.C. Collins undergoing work. So a lot of the steel, likely from Bethlehem Steel, did make it aboard the E.C. Collins. Later on, J.B. Ford, probably Edwin F. Holmes as well over the years. Next. And this is where I come in. I'm going to pause you there for a while. So after a 1913 storm, there was the secret commissions, and all the ships had to be sold. The Edwin F. Holmes became the E.C. Collins, named after transportation manager for Pittsburgh Steamship Company. The Umbria became the McGilvery Shiras, and that also became a Pittsburgh Steamship Company ship. In 1944, the pair, the Collins and the McGilvery Shiras, were sold to the Steinbrenner fleet. And that's when they predominantly started hauling grain. They still hauled the other cargoes, but grain was more predominant cargo. The E.C. Collins had a modern updated rudder added to her. I don't know why they upgraded the rudder for the Collins and not the McGilvery Shiras, but in 1956, Huron Cement Company, the J.B. Ford family, they were expanding their fleet, and that was the 6th vessel of their fleet to join the Huron Cement fleet. So they made an agreement to buy the vessel in 1956. Later on, they brought it to Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, and that's where it was converted by Christie Corporation and made into a cement carrier. How it ties into the Edmund Fitzgerald, well, it was the same time period. So in 1959, when there's a bunch of new stuff added to the J.B. Ford, from being an old, worn-out grain carrier, a lot of the same equipment found on the J.B. Ford was also found on the Edmund Fitzgerald, which was built in 1958. So in 1959, in January, that's when the gale, the high winds and the ice flood broke free the Shiras. It went down, struck the Tewksbury, and that brought down Michigan Avenue Lift Bridge. Afterwards, the McGilvery Shiras was cut up for scrap. Interesting to note, though, you can find it on my website, the McGilvery Shiras, the man, passed away that same year. And that's also the same year that the St. Lawrence Seaway opened up. So now you can have a saltwater ship all the way from anywhere in the world come onto the Great Lakes. They don't have to stop in Buffalo. The J.B. Ford started out as a green haul when it first came to Buffalo. It spent a lot of time in Buffalo as the J.B. Ford in a green library up to about 1965. 1965, it received a bow thruster, tunnel thruster, so it didn't need a tug for all occasions. And then it was repainted in a modern tan color. 1967, no, I don't hear it, but there was a heavy windstorm, 90 miles an hour off the lake, blowing onto Buffalo. The J.B. Ford was moored in Buffalo for the winter. It lost a vent for the ship's keeper, the binnacle outside for the emergency steering station. The framing was tweaked, had some other damage. Old Man Boiler Works came and they repaired the damage. At 6 South Park, so basically we see the Skyway Bridge right underneath that where the side where the stadium is. Right, one of the backside doors there is 6 South Park. The winds were so strong that a building collapsed there. It was a bar. 3 people were killed in that windstorm. The JB Ford was repaired, returned to service, continued 1976, so the 200th anniversary of the country. November 8th, 1975 is when the JB Ford entered Buffalo for the winter, and that's when Mike Padilla they converted the ship, Nicholson Hall Corporation, they converted the ship from coal firing to oil firing. And the oil firing, basically there was 3 silo-like cylinders that were built